But let me say something. I want to point something out. They talk about big spending Democrats. Yeah, I spend a lot of money to do these things, but guess what? I cut the deficit in half. In half, the federal deficit. This year alone, $1.4 trillion reduction, $400 billion reducing the debt. And last year, $350 billion reducing debt. Give me a break. I'm so sick and, oh, I shouldn't get going. Come on, man.
Hello and welcome to What the F*** Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amditis. Let's get to it. It's Tuesday, November 1st, 2022. Welcome to day 651. Chief Justice John Roberts temporarily blocked a House committee from accessing Trump's tax records. On Monday, Trump asked the Supreme Court to intervene in the case, claiming that the Ways and Means Committee doesn't have a valid legislative purpose for obtaining his taxes. Lower courts, however, have ruled that the committee does have broad authority to obtain tax returns and rejected Trump's claims that it was overstepping. Chief Justice Roberts said the case would remain on hold until the Supreme Court can act. He asked the committee to respond by noon on November 10th. The Supreme Court also refused to block a Georgia grand jury subpoena seeking Lindsey Graham's testimony about efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election in that state. Graham had asked the Supreme Court to block the subpoena, claiming that his efforts in Georgia were part of his official legislative duties and were therefore shielded from questioning. Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis, however, wrote in a petition seeking to compel his testimony that Graham made 2 calls to Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger after the election and asked about, quote, re-examining certain absentee ballots cast in Georgia in order to explore the possibility of a more favorable outcome for former President Donald Trump, end quote. The court's order was a paragraph long with no noted dissents. Graham's testimony is currently scheduled for November 17th. Meanwhile, the Justice Department says vigilante ballot security efforts in Arizona, quote, raise serious concerns about voter intimidation, end quote, and likely violate the Federal Voting Rights Act. The statement from the DOJ comes days after a federal judge refused to stop a group of activists from gathering at and around ballot drop boxes in order to monitor voters in Maricopa County. The League of Women Voters alleged that several organizations planned, quote, widespread campaigns to surveil and intimidate Arizona voters at ballot drop boxes and baselessly accuse them, end quote, of voter fraud. These so-called activists claim that they're watching for purported voter fraud, but election officials have reported that people in tactical gear and masks, including some with guns, have been watching over the drop boxes, as well as taking photos and videos and intimidating voters. Moving on, Twitter limited employee access to content moderation tools used to enforce its misinformation and civic integrity policies ahead of the midterms. Most of the people who work in Twitter's trust and safety organization are currently unable to penalize accounts that break rules around misleading information, offensive posts, or hate speech, many of the same policies that Trump routinely violated during the 2020 elections. And finally, Biden warned that Republicans will put entitlement programs, including Social Security and Medicaid, at risk if they take control of Congress. With just a week to go before Election Day, Biden used a speech in Florida to assail what he called Mega-MAGA Republicans, who proposed legislation to sunset all federal programs after 5 years and would require a vote to keep programs like Social Security and Medicare intact. Biden contrasted the party's visions for the country, noting, quote, this ain't your father's Republican Party, end quote, and pointing out that no Republicans voted for the Inflation Reduction Act, which included provisions to lower healthcare premiums and prescription drug costs. About 21% of the people over the age of 65 in Florida participate in Social Security, the second highest of any state. That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Amditis.